A unique phone call from Brian Landry to his parents, where he simply said the words, Gabby Gone. But what does those words mean? What did those words mean then? And what do they mean now? We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more on this episode of Charlie Crime Buster. It's what some people are calling the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals participating and do not represent those of city, county, state, or federal law enforcement agencies nor sponsors and platforms of this presentation. The Charlie Crime Buster name and all forms and abbreviations are property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent unless or until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains adult subject matter. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome. Today we're going to examine two lawsuits. Lawsuits that call out for accountability. One of them was to the Moab Police Department, the other one to the Landry family. Now, before you immediately think that when he said the words, Gabby Gone, that meant she was dead, well, there were two more times that Gabby was gone from Brian Landry, but was not dead. She was gone, but not dead, two other times. Well, you're going to hear all about that on today's show, so welcome to the podcast. We want to welcome you if you're a first-time listener. We love first-time listeners. Or a seasoned listener, we would like to invite you to reach out with a shout-out. That's right, reach out with a shout-out. You can reach me, charliecrimebuster at gmail.com, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. When you reach out with that shout-out, you can ask questions about the podcast that you're listening to now. You can even make suggestions about future podcasts, what you would like to see us cover. And as we say every week, you can lodge objections. You can disagree with what you hear from us about what we think about a particular case. I say you can disagree because here at Charlie Crime Buster, it is a safe zone. You can disagree. Now, not only shout out, but let me encourage you to reach out. Shout out, then reach out. Reach out and hit that like button right there on your phone or your listening device. We would like for you also to subscribe. Leave us a 5-star review. That enables the algorithm to help us reach more people on the podcast. Leave us that 5-star review. It'll help us to get the word out. And then, last but not least, I want to encourage you not only to shout out and reach out, but push out. Push out by going to peacemakernetwork.com, peacemakernetwork.com. There you can read about the men and women who rush toward danger instead of away from danger. We're talking about law enforcement, first responders, and the military. Read all about that and listen to all about that by going to peacemakernetwork.com. peacemakernetwork.com. Well, now, my friend, to really understand today's program, you're going to need to put yourself into a spot that's really uncomfortable. Really uncomfortable. I pray you never have to stand in real time and think like Gabby's parents and loved ones were thinking. Imagine the questions that Gabby Petito's family would have after they realized that their daughter had been murdered. They have to be asking, why did this have to happen? Could I or could we have done anything to prevent it? That is the question that many families ask who are victims of terrible violent crime. Not only could I have prevented it, but could others have prevented it? And what now can be done to prevent this from happening to others? Well, we're going to look at that because there's two legal battles that we're going to be focusing on today. We're going to talk about the lawsuit against Brian Landry's parents. We're also going to talk about the lawsuit against the Moab Utah Police Department that were all wrapped up into this case. So the main question is, was there anyone else legally responsible for what happened to Gabby? Now, I must also say, as unpopular as it is, you need to also put yourself in the place of Landry's parents as well, Brian Landry. Two lives are no longer with us. What could they have done to prevent this? And that is what one of these two lawsuits is all about. So think about your own child for just a minute. Your son, your daughter, gets tied up in a toxic relationship. As a result, your son, your daughter does something they should not have done. Now, most parents, they love their kids unconditionally. Even when they do bad things, they are still loved by their parents. So how do you balance a love for your child along with standing for the truth and facing accountability? Oh, yes, they have to face consequences, but would you help them as they face those consequences? Would you get them legal representation? Would you then listen to that legal team that gives you advice in this entire situation that should probably end up in court in situations like that? Now, we all like to look at things as black and white, but sometimes, as much as we try to avoid it, things are gray. And all of this is built into this episode. All right, let's get into it. Most of you already have knowledge of this case. We did an entire series on the case, and you can go back and find those episodes. We were actually following this case in real time, just as it unfolded. When people were looking for Gabby, when people were looking for Brian, we covered it right during those times in real time. So go back in your platform, find those episodes where we actually covered the Gabby Petito case. These two young lives that died tragically, Gabby Petito, Brian Laundrie. Now, Gabby was born and raised in Blue Point, New York. An interesting thing you may not know about Gabby, at least I thought it was interesting, was that she and her stepbrothers were actually on social media before this time that she went out and she documented her trips on social media. They were actually in a music video to raise awareness about the school shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School. So we do know now that she was not prone to violence, and yet she faced such a violent death. In 2017, Gabby, she graduated from the Bay Point Blue Point High School in Bay Point, New York. Now, this is where she also first met Brian Laundrie. In September 2017, she was living in Carolina Beach, North Carolina. There, she was working in a restaurant in nearby Wilmington. She worked as a hostess and also in the kitchen. She had actually applied to Cape Fear Community College back in 2019. But for some reason, she did not attend it. You know, lots of kids take a few years off before they get back into the school grind. Now, as far as Brian, Gabby and Brian actually began dating back in March of 2019. And they also moved in with Brian's parents down here in Northport, Florida. Now, there they both were working in a public supermarket, a supermarket brand that is very, very popular here in Florida. Gabby, she worked as a pharmacy technician. Brian, he worked in the grocery department. And as so many people had, they left their jobs at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, one that we all remember very, very prominently in our minds, right? So this famous cross-country trip, the one that we're going to be talking about, where Gabby ended up losing her life, this famous cross-country trip was not the first time they had traveled cross-country. Some of you don't know that. In late 2019 and 2020, they did do a drive from New York to California. There, they visited a lot of cool places on that site, on that trip. And maybe this is where they began to get the idea, why don't we make a traveling blog and we document that online? So from their first trip in March 2020, then Gabby turned 21, and they were actually engaged to be married in that year. And in December of that same year, Gabby purchased a 2002 Ford Transit Connect van. That van had been converted into a camper. And this would be what they would use to travel cross-country, to document the trip on social media. That was the van that the Moab Police Department pulled over on that fateful day. Now, both of them, prior to the trip, they had jobs and they were saving money for the trip. She worked 50-hour weeks at a Taco Bell. Boy, that had to be grueling. Brian, he worked in an organic juice bar. So in July 2021, almost 5 years ago from this episode's production, they left New York for their trip. That month, they visited Monument Rocks, the Great Sand Dunes National Park, Mystic Hot Springs, and the Canyonlands National Park. This was all documented on Gabby's social media's presence and platform, and it did reveal two young people that appeared to be very much in love against the background of beautiful, beautiful sunsets and beautiful, beautiful landscapes. But as often, online presence does not always reveal reality. Because it was in August 12th, 2021, that a witness called 911, and they reported that a couple later identified as both Gabby and Brian, were fighting in front of the Moonflower Community Cooperative in Moab, Utah. The caller said they saw a man slap a woman, after which the man and woman ran up and down the sidewalk. Then the man hit the woman again before they drove off together. But yet another witness described the incident to police as looking as though Petito and Laundrie were talking aggressively, and that Gabby, was punching him in the arm. Gabby punching Brian. The witness said it looked like that Brian was trying to leave Gabby behind, take her phone with him. But before they drove off together, she climbed into the driver's seat, moved over to the passenger seat so that he could drive, and according to this witness, asked him, "Why do you have to be so mean?" So now they had a 911 call, officers from the Moab City Police Department. They found that van driving erratically near the entrance to one of the national park, Arches National Park. There they conducted a traffic stop. And this is the infamous traffic stop that maybe you've seen online. And when the officer walked up there, he found Gabby sobbing in the passenger seat. Now, Gabby first downplayed the physical altercation. The officer even pointed out marks on her arm and face, told her just be honest, and she said that Brian kept telling her to shut up, grabbed her face. But then she told the officer, he said to the officer, that's what Gabby said, what Laundrie said, Brian said, let's just take a breather, let's not go anywhere, let's calm down for a minute. She was getting worked up. Now, neither Gabby nor Brian wanted to press charges as a result of the incident, even though Gabby had actually said that she hit Brian first. The police, they kind of said, we're going to look at this as more of a mental breakdown rather than domestic violence. Domestic violence, if it had been proven, would actually generate an arrest. But the police did separate the couple. They arranged for Brian to spend the night at a hotel in Moab and for Gabby to stay in her converted van. Now, here is the first time, pay attention, the first time that Gabby was gone from Brian. Because right after that, now we're going to get into the traffic stop later, more of that when we talk about the lawsuit on the Moab Police Department. But on August the 17th now, right after this, that they were actually stopped there and earlier in August 12th, here we find on August 17th, Brian actually flew home from Salt Lake City, Tampa, Florida. He left Gabby behind. So here is the second time that Gabby was gone from Brian. The first time she was gone, when the police separated them at that traffic stop. The second time that she was gone from Brian, when Brian flew home to Tampa. Now, when he flew home from Tampa, Gabby spent several days at a Fairfield Inn there near Salt Lake International Airport. She checked out on August the 24th. He flew on August 17th. She checked out August 24th. Now, it was later explained by the family's attorney that Brian made this trip, quote unquote, to obtain some items and empty and close a storage unit to save money that they would be able to extend the road trip on. And Brian returned on August 23rd to rejoin Gabby and continue the trip. Gabby's mother said she last spoke to her daughter on August the 25th, told that the couple was traveling from the Grand Teton Yellowstone National Park. And then the final post that was made on Gabby's Instagram account was on August the 25th. And it had photos of herself taken before a butterfly mural there outside a restaurant there in Utah. And according to Brian's family, on August 29th, Brian called his mother. The conversation that they had said that his tone completely changed. Brian's father called him back. And according to court reports in these lawsuits, Brian told him that Gabby's gone and that he may need a lawyer without any further details. And that is the third time that Gabby is gone from Brian. It is from this point that Gabby is missing and Brian returned home, driving the van that Gabby owned. Sadly, on September the 19th, human remains matching the description of Gabby, though they found that at the Spread Creek camping area in Wyoming, not very far from where that van was previously observed. Her identity was confirmed. Autopsy would determine the manner of death was homicide by blunt force injuries to the head and the neck with manual strangulation. And this occurred, according to the officials there, 3 to 4 weeks before the body was found. And on September the 23rd, the United States District Court for the District of Wyoming, they issued an arrest warrant for Brian due to his unauthorized use of Gabby's debit card. The FBI took that material, of course, also the DNA, to match Laundrie's DNA from his home. So now there's an arrest warrant out for him. And when the police searched for Laundrie, not only was Gabby gone, but now Brian is gone. And then on October the 20th, they found Brian's skeletal remains, was actually identified by forensic dentistry, and some of his belongings were found there in that environmental park there in an area that had recently been underwater due to flooding. Now, his cause of death could not be determined by an autopsy, but then after his remains was given to others who studied it, November the 23rd, they concluded that Brian died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Now, at this point, most people thought game over. He left a note where he said he didn't kill Gabby. No one to prosecute, right? Game over. Well, not quite. Then comes 2 lawsuits. And we're going to get into those in just a moment, but right now it's time for us to pause, take a deep breath, and share with you what we call Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Our Crazy Crook story today comes from Leesburg, Florida. There, the Leesburg News said that the Leesburg Police Department issued an arrest report. They said that there was actually an incident that occurred on Wednesday, June the 10th, around 7:15 a.m. There, the officers responded to a motor vehicle accident at a mobile gas station located there on East Boulevard in Leesburg. They came across a driver that was identified as 47-year-old Corey Silcox. Corey, was sitting in his red pickup truck after allegedly crashing into another vehicle. Now, as the officers approached, they did notice what they called signs of impairment. The arrest report reported that glossy eyes, a noticeable alcohol odor, and stumbling. While talking to the officers, Corey attempted to explain what had happened. According to him, he was driving, turned onto North Canal Street. As he did, he crashed into another vehicle. Now, Corey exited the vehicle shortly after officers responded to the location. He was stumbling, leaned on the car to regain his footing, things that you always look for in a drunk driving situation. Now, they continued the conversation with him, but they noted in the report that, Corey appeared to be confused. And the police said the man would not stop talking, just kept staring at the vehicle without saying anything further. When asked if he was okay, he responded he was, but he kept staring, and that stare was cut short when Corey was asked to walk back to his truck. Again, he stumbled, just as before. Now, at this point, they asked Corey to participate in a field sobriety test after witnessing the behavior. But, according to the report, Corey refused. Then he was immediately arrested. And then they said, as they began to search his car, of course, to inventory it there at the scene, he said something that is rather unusual. Corey, who was not willing to submit to a test, for DUI, he says these words, quote, "I am an alcoholic, not a druggie." Then, of course, he refused the breathalyzer test. As a result of his refusals, he was charged with driving under the influence, refusal to submit to DUI testing, and records also showed that he had a previous refusal instance from back in 2024. That one was no convictions. So get this, here is a guy who's careful not to do any of the tests, although there's all kinds of signs that he's under the influence. Yet he looks out to the officers and he says, "Hey, by the way, I'm not a druggie, I'm an alcoholic." That's pretty well announcing that you're really there to be arrested for a DUI. So this idiot, this crazy crook who told the police, you know, when attorneys say you ought to keep your mouth shut, you probably ought to. But no, he said, I am an alcoholic, not a druggie, is indeed Charlie Crimebuster's crazy crook of the week. So now there are 2 lawsuits that have been filed by Gabby's family. The first one is against the Laundrie family. In March of 2022, Gabby's family filed a lawsuit against Brian's family. They claimed that Christopher and Roberta Laundrie knew that Gabby was dead while her family was desperately searching for answers. They went on to claim that the family and their attorneys remained silent despite allegedly knowing critical information. Now, it's important to note that this lawsuit was primarily for intentional afflictions of emotional distress, not for causing Gabby's death. It was apparent that there was no evidence to support that Brian's family was responsible for Gabby's death, but could they prove that the family caused emotional suffering by their conduct during the search for Gabby? Now, here's where it gets tricky. They amended the lawsuit in 2023, and according to the filing, Brian had called his parents on August 27, 2021. He was in a frantic state, told them Gabby was gone and that he needed a lawyer. Then the complaint says that Laundrie's retained legal counsel almost immediately afterward. So the reason this matters legally, if juries believe that the parents knew Gabby was dead while her family was desperately searching for her, that just might support a claim that their conduct was intentionally cruel. It does strengthen Gabby's family's argument that they were not merely remaining silent, but were acting with knowledge of the situation. But for many, the real smoking gun, as they say, the smoking gun, was that there was a key legal issue in a statement that was released through their attorney saying, quote unquote, the family hoped that Gabby would be reunited with her family. Now, Gabby's family is saying because they said they hoped Gabby would be reunited with her family, that they knowingly made a false statement because, in their opinion, Brian's family, mom and dad, already knew she was dead. Now, here's another thing. The judge allowed this distress claim to proceed largely because of this allegation. They were trying to throw it out all at once. But the judge said, no, because of this allegation, we're going to keep it in there. Now, one legal summary said that simple silence may not have been enough, but an allegedly misleading public statement could be enough and could be actionable. So that statement that the attorney made on behalf of the family that said they wanted for Gabby to be reunited with her parents could be actionable in this particular situation. Now remember, they tried to get this dismissed. Brian's family did, but the judge said no. Because of this fact of this one statement, we're going to leave it in there. It may cause emotional suffering. Now, he didn't rule that it did, but he ruled that the jury ought to hear it so they would know. Now, there's another thing that happened in this case that is really, really important. There was a letter that was discovered there with Brian, and it was written by his mom, Roberta. And she said in that letter that she loved him, she would be with him always, and she would even bring a shovel. Now, bringing a shovel, of course, refers to helping dig a grave of someone. There's an old saying, that a real friend will be the one, if you want to know who your real friend is, ask who it is out there that would help you bury a body. Yeah, you've heard that probably, right? Well, this was a mom who said that she would help bury a body. She was helping her son. She said she would help get him out of jail. She'd put something in the cake so he could get out of jail. And then the phrase, the real kicker, I believe in this, she said in that letter, burn it after reading. Well, guess what? He didn't burn it after reading, and that letter was there. Now, the argument is that this reveals the relationship of his mom willing to help Brian regardless of circumstances. Now, on the other hand, Roberta, she swears that this letter was written before the cross-country trip, way before Gabby's death. The defense, they argued that it's an old family letter taken out of context and unrelated to the homicide. And then there is also the fact, legally, that his family was under no legal duty to help investigators. Several legal analysts have pointed out that the parents have no affirmative duty to volunteer information to another family or to police about a specific legal requirements. And there was never really any evidence that Christopher or Roberta participated in Gabby's killing. Now keep in mind that the lawsuit, of course, did not depend upon proving that they helped kill Gabby, but whether there was emotional distress caused by their conduct in this case. Well, what happened is simply this. As of June 2026, we do know that the amount of a settlement, we don't know the amount of it, but we do know that they settled. We do know that they settled it out of court before it got there. And the amount of it has never really been publicly disclosed. We know that they sued for in excess of $30,000 to the family, but there's no information on how much money, if any, that they gave. We do know that the settlement did bring forth the fact that the family did not admit that they were liable for anything. But we do know there was a settlement. And usually when there's a settlement, there was some sort of money that was passed by. Now, don't get confused. There was another lawsuit against Brian's estate. That one, there was a $3 million judgment. And that's frequently mentioned in the media. But that's not the same suit that we're talking about here. Now, $3 million, that's really nothing because Brian didn't own anything. But that just basically was a message more than anything else when they sued his estate. But now they have sued his family, and that's been settled out of court. We don't know what the amount was. But I guess the question is, to me, is not so much what amount it was, but why did Gabby's family settle when they had already survived an appeal to dismiss the case? And the judge said, no, I'm not going to dismiss it. And it was just literally weeks away from the jury hearing it. Why did her family, decide to settle the lawsuit? We know that the Laundries were not wealthy people, so there probably wasn't a lot of money involved in this thing. And not like, the kind of money that you see when there is a lawsuit, for the death of someone. So we know there probably wasn't a large amount of money, but why did they settle it? Did they have enough information? Or was it they thought that maybe they would not win with a jury? Juries have often been sympathetic to victims like this, but yet her family decided to settle it. Well, what do you think about it? Tell me. I would love to hear from you. Reach me, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. What about you if you were Brian's family? Would you have done what they did? They hired an attorney and they got quiet. They didn't say a word. Even while they were looking for Gabby, they did not say a word. Even when they found her body, they did not say a word. I mean, they said, oh, yeah, we're sorry that this happened, blah, 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 blah. But they did not admit that they knew. And in fact, they are actually saying over and over again through these lawsuits, they did not know when Brian first came home or he made that call that she had been killed. They knew that she was gone, but she was gone 2 times before. She was gone whenever they went back to that point there when they had the Moab Police Department had stopped them. They were not together that night. They might have got together later, but the police separated them. She was gone when he flew back to Tampa for those several days while she was in a hotel working on her social platform. And there she was in a hotel. He was back there closing out some sort of storage shed, so they alleged. So they've been gone before. So they're basically saying, we did not know she was dead. They didn't admit that they knew that she was dead, nor would they have to admit that they knew that she was dead. You see, you can be silent, and that is something that you can do, and that's something they had no legal reason to really reveal anything at that point. So where are you on this? And if you were his parents, what would you have done? And if you were Gabby's parents, why would you not press on for the trial and a jury to award? It would be much more public. There would be much more of a message that if they were going for some sort of message on domestic violence, that would be much more of a message. Or did they get a settlement and they thought, well, this is the best we're going to get and we don't want to risk losing it in court, in a court of law, so we accept the settlement. So there we are on the first lawsuit. Now we're going to get into the second lawsuit against the Moab Police Department on our next episode. So don't miss the next episode. This is where I'm really interested in sharing with you some of my thoughts about this. And now you're going to hear it from a law enforcement standpoint as well as from the public standpoint. Next week, we're going to talk about the lawsuit with the Moab Police Department. Now, the reason why we're adding this to our series of Gabby Petito is this. There are things that we are learning now as a result of these lawsuits that we did not know during the time of the case when we covered it in real time. And we're going to bring those things out to you. Well, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. If you are involved in some sort of toxic relationship and it gets violent, for goodness sakes, get out. There are all kinds of help out there. Just go online and just Google victims, Google domestic violence, and you're going to find all kinds of self-help there to help you get out of that situation. And do get out of that situation, because many times it turns deadly. So until this time, next time, Charlie Crimebuster here, reminding you, be safe, be alert. Yep, for the life you save, it may be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. We would like to thank our sponsor, the Peacemaker Network, and also encourage you to support the first responders, military, and law enforcement personnel by contributing to the Peacemaker Network. That's peacemakernetwork.com. All music and sound effects are courtesy of Pixabay.com. That's Pixabay.com. You can also support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, tag @CharlieCrimebuster, and then click the subscribe button. By doing so, you'll be notified each time we drop one of our shows. Another more convenient way for you to listen to our podcasts, or for you to say to your smart speaker, play Charlie Crimebuster. If you have comments or suggestions, we would love to hear from you, so please send them to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Or you can call or text us at 407-917-2211. That's 407-917-2211. Thank you for listening, and we hope that you will join us again for another exciting crime episode with Charlie Crimebuster.